was live. I'm live. Alive. Somebody's here. I'm waiting if still other people join. So give me a minute. Stay here or write something in the comments why you're here. Are you interested in flat Earth? You can answer the question, is Earth flat? If you want. In the comments, is the Earth flat, yes or no? Just so I know who I'm talking to. If there are people interested in knowing more about it or not. Just let me know. I have 3 reasons or 3 observations for you today that we get into. So I hope somebody is interested. These are actually observations that I think in most flat Earth topics or talks, forums, discussions are rarely mentioned. So stick around. Yes, Earth is flat, of course, completely flat. So let's just start. I don't think there are more people joining. So whoever is here, first thing, people always say that the Earth is flat because the Earth is a ball, because ships disappear at the horizon when they are at the beach. They make vacation, they go on vacations, and ships just disappear at the horizon, at the ocean, and that makes people think that we live on a ball. But it's an illusion, and that illusion is created by perspective, because things move away from us, things get more distant, and we have a certain perception with our eyes, and we don't change our locations, but objects in space, in the world, are changing their locations. So our horizon at the beach is 5 kilometers ahead of us, or 3 miles in American or English standard measurements. So 5 kilometers. That's our horizon line from our viewpoint, because we have an eye level that is like 2 meters maybe above sea level. So you have, for example, ants. What about them? They are very, very close to the floor. So their horizon is actually just 5 meters ahead. So when you calculate that, the ball Earth that ants would stand on has a radius of 6 kilometers. Just based on the fact that their horizon is just 5 meters ahead, because they are much closer to the floor, and perspective creates the horizon. So people say, okay, because we as humans can see 5 kilometers into distance until there's the edge, until there's the horizon line, our Earth must be a ball, and we're standing on that ball that has a radius of 6,000 kilometers. So that's the whole reasoning. So is our Earth different than the Earth that ants stand on? So you see, it's all just about perception, about how we perceive actually reality with our eyes. And the closer we get to the floor, the smaller the radius gets, the circumference that is around us. So we have a circumference of 5 kilometers with a radius of 5 kilometers, and ants have a circumference with a radius of just 5 meters. But we're standing on the same flat surface. So we can, for example, tell the ant, no, you're not living on a ball, because we know the surface is completely flat, beyond 5 meters. But the ant doesn't see that because it's much closer to the floor. So who is telling the people that they're not living on a ball, but on a flat Earth? Of course, it's people like us that use their brains. They don't think with just their eyes, they actually use their spirits. Okay? And that's what we have to get to the people, across to them, that it's all an illusion, that the whole ball theory and the whole heliocentric model is based off of that perceptual illusion. And people need to study how their eyes actually work. It's a mechanism, if you want. Or we cannot zoom, for example. We are basically stuck to a coordinate on a geographical plane, and things like the sun or the moon and the stars are very far away, and they are moving. So, of course, to us it looks like we're standing in the middle of something, and we could be rotating maybe if we consider everything else as fixed. But the truth is that the surface we're standing on, that's fixed, that's non-rotational. It's the most heavy object, the heaviest object in this universe or in life, in this world. Because here we have the metals. Underneath us is all the heavy metals. It's the earth. And that's why it's called the lights in the sky, because these are the light objects. Okay, it's all physics. And another observation that suits to that is a physical phenomenon that is called red shift. I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but redshift means you have a light source, and that light source, for example, emits a red light, or let's say it emits a yellow light, and the further that light source moves away from you, the darker the color gets. So the wavelength of the light changes. That means yellow light becomes red to your perception, because the light source is moving away from you into distance. And where, or it sounds familiar when you describe it like that, it's sunrise and sunset. We know that the colors change a lot during sunrise and sunset. The sun has a different color at these points in time than, for example, at its zenith. At its zenith it's very white, but sunset it's reddish. It gets redder because the sun is moving away from us, because the light source itself is moving away, and that creates that redshift that everybody loves. You know, everybody loves sunsets. It's a beautiful time during the day, beautiful colors. But who thinks about whether the earth is flat or a ball in that moment? Of course, nobody. But it's very interesting to understand that a light source that has a certain color, emits a certain color, when it goes into distance to your perception, it actually changes its color. And the way you can also better understand this is that, well, every light source has a certain force, has a certain, how would you say? Yeah, it has a certain power, illumination capacity, and the closer you get to the light source, the closer you get to the truth of its actual power, of its actual wavelength of the light. Because wavelength defines the color. So red light has a different wavelength than yellow light or green light. Usually people who are into physics, they know all this. I don't have to explain these things, but I don't know who's listening, so I'm starting from the bottom up. Yeah, why do ships actually disappear bottom up? It's a funny argument that ball, or let me say flat earth deniers, always mention is ships disappear bottom up. Why can we still see a ship at the horizon when flat earthers constantly say, yeah, everything's vanishing. But the ship doesn't actually vanish in that sense that it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you don't see it anymore. And that's where the horizon line is. No, our horizon line is based on the relation of our altitude to that flat surface that we're standing on. So we're very close to the flat surface at the beach, only around 2 meters, and there's a relationship now. So we can look 5 kilometers ahead, and we know that to our perception, not in reality but to our perception, the ground is lifting off and coming up the further it goes away. It's rising up, it's increasing in altitude until it hits eye level at the horizon. So it is actually blocking our view from seeing anything that is further than that. So if a ship goes to that point, yes, it gets smaller and smaller until it hits the 5-kilometer horizon line, but it's still not small enough for it to completely disappear out of view. Let's say it's a cruise ship, a big ship, you can still see the ship, and yet because the ocean, the ground, is blocking our view, it actually disappears from bottom up. And it looks to us as if the ship is going beyond a curve, when in truth it is just going beyond our visual limit. Because it's like our eyes are like a camera frame, and it's a frame, and it's like a picture, and things have to fit into this picture. So if you have ocean and sky, they have to fit somehow into this frame. Because then people say, perspective is not what creates this illusion. It's because the earth is a ball, the earth is a ball, the earth is a ball. Because that's what they get told in school very early on, and then they stop thinking. You see? But let's get to another point, which would be the third reason or observation that you can make, which is also a little bit detailed. Maybe you didn't hear about that before. It's light latency. I don't know if you know, but light has a latency just like sound, because there is a light source and then there is an observer, and the light has to travel through space from the source to you, to the observer. And there's a latency, it takes some time to get there, and we know that light is the fastest, they say it's the fastest particle, or it has the highest speed. And the same with sound, for example. Or for example, you look at a lightning strike and you see the lightning in the sky. You already see it, but you didn't hear the thunder, so it takes some time. Maybe you count to 9 seconds, and then you can divide it by 3, and you know that the lightning is like 3 kilometers away from you. You still have time to look for shelter, because the sound, it took some time for the sound to travel from the source to the observer, to the receiver, and the same with light. And translating this to flat earth stuff, you have the sun in the sky, it's a light source. And it's well known, even on NASA's homepage, they tell you how they calculate light latencies. For the sun, for the celestial bodies, for the moon, for stars, and students of astronomy have to calculate that very early on within their studies, how to calculate light latency for stars when you observe them, because the light takes a certain amount of time till it gets to us. So people know, for example, that when you look at stars, you actually look into the past, because the light has traveled from that star to you. Now, here it comes. Why is this important in the discussion of flat Earth or ball Earth? Because you only have to calculate a light latency whenever the light source itself is moving, not when the light source is fixed and something else is moving, like the Earth is rotating around itself, you don't have to calculate a light latency because the light is always coming from the same source, from the same point in space. Yet when the light source itself is moving, like the sun, you have to all of a sudden calculate light latency, because when the sun, for example, in 1 second is in one point, it has already moved on because it is itself moving, and then where you see the light coming from, the actual sun is not anymore there because the light source itself is moving. You see what I'm saying? So that's why NASA calculates light latency, and it is a proof. They basically prove, I mean, they know that the Earth is flat, but it's a proof for us, because they calculate light latency, that the sun is moving in the sky and not the Earth is rotating. That's a lie. The Earth is stationary, non-rotational. The stars and the sun and the moon, all of these objects are rotating above us. And you have, for example, the sun in the zenith. You're looking at the sun, and now you know that what you're actually looking at is not the sun itself, the body, the actual body, but the light that the sun has emitted, and exactly around 8 minutes before it was there. So you see, the light, not the actual body of the sun. The actual body of the sun is already 8 minutes ahead of its position where you actually receive or where you actually observe the sun. So that's also very interesting to know, very good to know, that when you look at the sun, it's also an illusion because of this big distance of a few thousand kilometers, that the sun has already moved on from that point in space, and what you are seeing is basically the past of that sun, because the sun is constantly emitting light and it's moving in space. So the way you can compare this is, for example, to a garden hose. You have a garden hose and you're holding it, and water comes out with a pressure. When you don't move the garden hose, the water just hits a certain point in space and it doesn't change. So if, for example, I don't know, your dog is passing by that stream of water, there is no real latency because the water is coming continually. And the same with a light source that is continuously emitting light from one and the same position. There would not be any latency that we have to calculate. However, with the garden hose, you know, when you're moving it with your hand, like you're turning it to the sides, all of a sudden the water jet, that stream of water, is starting to bend, and that is the latency observable. But with light latency, you don't observe it that well, but you can compare it with that. So you have the garden hose, you're moving it around, all of a sudden you have a curved water jet, and that's the latency observed. And the same with light. Imagine the garden hose is the sun that is emitting light. So the sun is emitting a constant stream of light, and when the sun is moving, the light is actually bending in space, just like the water stream. And there's a latency happening that you actually recognize on Earth, and that you have to take credit for, you have to calculate it when you're observing objects in the sky that are moving. And if it were not so, if we would actually live within that heliocentric model, where the sun is fixed, where the stars, some stars are fixed, and then you would not have to calculate that, because the light obviously would always be coming from that certain spot in space where the light is emitted from. Okay, I hope that this helps for better understanding the garden hose thing. But it's a very good example to understand how physics actually work, what light is doing. I mean, a light source is just emitting light continuously, just like a water stream. And if the sun would be fixed and the earth would be a ball, that light would just straightforward be emitted onto earth, onto that surface. And whether the earth is turning or not, or doing anything else, jumping around, dancing, whatever, doesn't matter even, because the light source itself is not moving. You see? But the moment the light source itself is moving, just like the garden hose, light starts to bend and there's a light latency. And we know that on flat Earth, the sun is above us and it's moving, and it's not as far away as they say. They say, for example, the sun is billions, what was it, 90 billion or whatever, billions of miles away, light years away, but in truth the sun is much closer to the Earth. It's just about a few thousand kilometers, maybe 8,000 kilometers, maybe 6,000, I don't have the correct number, but it's much closer. And you would not have a redshift. Let's get back to the redshift, if you're still here from that redshift physical phenomenon, because it ties in with the distances that NASA gives us to the sun. Like they say, it's so far away, it's billions of miles away. A redshift would not occur if the sun is so far away, because what is a radius of like 6,000 kilometers of Earth, if Earth was a ball, and then rotating around itself? You know, you're going from east, no, the sun is moving from east to west, so we're going from west to east, that rotation. But if the sun is from us, like light years away, and you're just going a few thousand kilometers, you're changing your position a few thousand kilometers, there is seriously no redshift happening. The light source, the color of that light source would stay the same. We would not have the sunsets and sunrises that we perceive on Earth with that beautiful color change, because the sun is much closer to Earth. That's why it's happening. The way you can compare this is if you have a car, for example, and 100 kilometers ahead of you, and let's say you could still see it, and you know the size of a car, it's pretty small. If that car moves 1 meter to the side, would you recognize it? Obviously no. You would not recognize that movement. To you it would look the same. And the same with the color change of the sun. If the sun were fixed and so far away from us, billions of miles, and we're just turning around a very, very small Earth that only has a radius of 6,000 kilometers compared to those billion miles, then you would not see, it would not be possible to see any color change of the sun. So that's simple physics. Just like you would not see when a car that is 100 kilometers away from you moves 1 meter to the right, you would not see that. Very simple. There is a ratio here, okay? And so now you can understand if the sun is just 8,000 kilometers away from us and it is moving then, let's say 10,000 kilometers from Europe to America, from east to west, of course the ratio is much better here for it to give us that color change, that redshift, so that the sun is very bright and almost white when it's at its zenith, and when it comes to the sunset it becomes redder, and that's called redshift. Is Earth flat? Yes, no. So who said no? Who is here? Who said no? Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. Real world. Die flache Erde ist das Dümmste und Absurdeste, was ich je gehört habe. Betonung auf töricht. So is somebody listening from Germany? Somebody listening from America, US, wherever, outside of Europe? Does everybody speak German here? The guy said, real worlder said, flat earth is the stupidest and absurdest thing he has ever heard. And he was highlighting the stupidity of it just because, I guess, he cannot wrap his head around the fact that people might lie to him, that school has dumped people down on a broad scale. Mandatory school, you know, you'd think that they tell you the truth. But somehow, when you walk through life, you figure out that because it's mandatory, they can tell you whatever they want, and people would say it's true. And you have to take responsibility basically for yourself and for your family, community, to not just believe anything that comes out of mandatory school, but to do your research and yeah, go on. And it's not like school is bad or anything, like in the sense of it never teaches any truth. There's a lot of truth, a lot of physical knowledge that school produces, and they hand to the people in order to recruit them for system jobs, of course, obviously. So they have to do that. They have to give them the truth, but who actually applies the science that they learn in school, and then also takes that information, the spark of information that you learn, and then you have to consider that the spark of information is like dirt that you have to sieve. You have to sieve the truth from the lies, just like you would sieve gold from the sand. And that's basically mandatory school. So you cannot blindly trust whatever comes out of mandatory school. You would have to take that information that you've learned and go back and then say, okay, what of it is actually true? What of it is lies? How much can I figure it out? How much am I interested in figuring it out or not? And so then you realize that a lot of stuff that is taught in school is actually good knowledge. It is truthful knowledge when it comes to physics, for example, but how many people really apply that knowledge to reality or verify it so that they don't go just live in an illusion, in a model, for example, like the ball Earth model, the heliocentric model, and instead they use the physics that they've learned in school to debunk that, because that's what physics does. If a model doesn't hold up, if physics constantly disagrees with a model, then the model cannot be true. And we have a lot of evidence. As I mentioned, we have the light latency. We have, what else? The redshift, for example. We have water levels that people um, usually take and talk about, but of course you cannot really prove a flat Earth based on water levels, but it is just one physical, yeah, one physical observation that you can make to get closer to the truth, and then combine it with the other truthful observations. For example, light latency of a light source such as the sun, and that you only have to calculate light latency of a sun if the light source itself is moving. Because if the light source itself is fixed in space, there is no latency, no observable latency possible. Simply because the light is always being emitted from one and the same spot. But the moment the light source itself is moving, which is proof that the sun is moving actually and the earth is flat, you actually have to calculate a light latency because the light source itself is moving. And light is constantly being emitted from that source. And NASA is calculating that. They don't make it a secret. Why? Why should they? I mean, with physics, there are no secrets actually. There are just people who understand it and people who don't understand it. People who do the work, the research, thinking about it. And then there are these people, other people that would just open their minds, stuff themselves with information, and then just vomit it, just like they've learned in school. But people would do good, would do better if they just for once sit down with that bulk of information that mandatory school has handed them and sort it out between truth and lies. And then you will get to the knowledge that a lot of stuff that mandatory school is teaching is good stuff, is truthful, but it's falsely applied. Or let's say they bake a cake with truthful knowledge and then they sprinkle some lies on top, like chocolate drops of chocolate. They sprinkle lies on top, and that lie, for example, one of these lies is the ball Earth. So why not take that school knowledge that is actually truthful and apply it, like compare it with actual reality? But people it seems to me that they tend to stay in a lie rather than actually wanting to know the truth, and that's sad. But all we can do is talk about it. We don't have to blame anybody. The people who came up with the ball theory and the heliocentric model. We don't have to blame these people necessarily. I mean, what can we do even? Let them have it. Let them have their ball Earth. Let them have their heliocentric model and all the people that believe in it. But there must be people that say it's false. It's a lie, it's an illusion, it's just based off of the illusion of perception. When you're, for example, standing at the beach and you're looking out into the ocean and then you see a horizon line and then you see ships disappearing and then people look at that with the filter that was put onto them through mandatory school that the Earth is a ball, and then they say, yeah, the Earth is actually a ball because ships are disappearing, but they don't remove that filter in their minds, from their minds, and then like from new, almost like newly born, looking into reality and then say, okay, is that theory actually true? Is that model actually true? Are we really living on a spinning ball that spins around the sun and then the sun is moving around in space and still we get to see the same stars every day, all year, for decades, for centuries? It's funny that everything stays like so, everything would stay so calculated, like nothing really changes much, to be honest, and yet they want to believe that they're flying and howling and everything is flying through space and they're spinning. Like, I think what it does to people when you really believe that you're standing on a spinning ball is it makes them like drunk, you know? It puts them into a trance or something. If they think that they're standing on a spinning ball and they just see everything spinning in their head, like, what does it do really to people? I mean, if you look at the Bible, for example, the Bible often says the earth is stationary, the earth is flat, the earth is immovable, stands firm. So there is much more truth to that, and it's actually it aligns with our actual observation of things, because we do not really observe that the earth underneath us is moving. We observe it very steady, we observe it very heavy, it's just at its place where it has to be, and everything else is turning. That's how we actually observe it. But there are deceivers out there. There are deceivers out there that take a camera and instead of filming it as it is, the earth is standing still, everything else is turning, like the night sky is turning and these lights are turning. No, they have turned it around. They are trying to fool the people now with videos where the sky is being stabilized and the camera is moving. So it looks like the earth is moving, although it's just the camera moving and the stars are fixed. So that it creates this illusion that the earth is turning and the stars are fixed. When that's not how we actually observe reality. We observe it in that way. We're standing on earth, earth is silent, earth is stationary, earth stands firm, earth is fixed, earth is strong, stable, all these words, and then the sky is rotating. Okay, that's how we observe it. Why can't people just let it be what it is? Why do they have to turn everything upside down? And what's funny about this is that the heliocentric model and believing in the ball earth and everything leads you to believing that space travel is real, that space travel is possible, that people can walk on the moon, and that people float around in space, in space stations or whatever, that they float around there. But it's completely physics turned upside down. Okay, it's deceivers. It's deceiving. Physics tells us that the body, the human body, is only weightless, or seems to be weightless, in water, which is on Earth, on ground. Okay, bodies of water are lying on top of the Earth, and human bodies are weightless in water. But human bodies fall through gas, and they always do. Whether you're standing in an ISS that has an altitude of 500 kilometers up in the air, or a human body is jumping from a cliff into the water. You know, there are these cliff jumpers, and they fall through space because it's air. It depends on the medium. Why is the human body floating in water? Because of buoyancy. That means the human body has a certain density, and in fact it consists of 60% of water, or sometimes a little bit more, and that's why the human body is actually floating in water. So these are the actual physics, but then NASA comes, they spin their lies, they deceive the people, and they say everything is upside down. The human body floats in space. The human body floats in gas, which is wrong. The human body does not float in gas. The human body falls through gas because of densities, because of gravity. Whether that's 1 meter above the ground or 1,000 meters above the ground, it doesn't matter. The human body always falls through gas, and it's only weightless in water. Because the human body itself, consists of 60% of water. So that's why it seems weightless. But again, through film tricks, film production, they have just turned everything around, make the people believe that space travel is real, all these kind of things. And I mean, if people want to believe that, okay, let them. I don't discuss with them. I don't try to constantly convince them, but at least I'm trying to give them something to chew on. You know, that they can say, okay, maybe I should look into this. Maybe um, maybe he has a point or something. And in the end, people are responsible for their own destiny, sort of, in that sense, because nobody can actually make you or convince you of anything. You would have to. I mean, if somebody tries to deceive you, people can deceive you. For example, with animations, with movies, with graphics, with books, with words. And then people are convinced about an idea, for example, the heliocentric model, but you cannot really convince someone if they are already entangled in the lies. You cannot really convince someone that the heliocentric model is a lie. They would have to take the initiative themselves. They are responsible for it, to research it, to leave the actual information that was handed to them by mandatory school. And they would actually have to go out there, look into reality, collect information, talk to people, and have the initiative. And only then they could maybe start to see through the lies. But you cannot really from outside convince somebody. You can only give them or hand them, throw them a few bones to chew on, sort of. You see what I'm saying? So, flat Earth. Do you believe the flat is Earth? The Earth is flat. It's flat as a pancake. So we have a 50-50 now. Before it was 40 something yes and 60% no. So we're getting there. Somebody texting. Wow, das ist ja schon seit Evangelium geworden. Schon sein Evangelium geworden. Nur Deutsche hier. Flat Earth is not an evangelium. Is not the Bible. It's just a part of it that people need to talk about, simply because there is this deception out there in the world. So otherwise we wouldn't have to talk about it if they would have just told us the truth. But of course they had to create this whole space travel lie. So now they cannot really come out with the truth that the Earth is flat, because they are already deep into the space travel lie. So they want to fly to Mars. Of course they have to convince the people that the Earth is a ball. They have to convince the people that that the model is heliocentric, that we can go to the moon, that we can go to Mars, to just make people believe or buy the lie about going there, about space travel and all these kind of things. So of course they will not tell you the truth. And then you got people that come here just trying to I don't know, they have no evidence, they have no good arguments, they just come here and try to heckle you, whatever. Du hast es auf dir. Es ist dämonisch, es ist zu 100% dämonisch. Okay. Was ist dämonisch? Hallo? TMM? Was ist dämonisch? Was meinst du? Talking about the physical shape of the Earth is surely not demonic. Somebody said it's demonic or something. I don't know what he's meaning. He means das ist ein Witz. Was ist ein Witz? Hallo? So nobody's coming in. I don't see any partakers. I just see one like. I just see the 50-50% is Earth flat or not. Er hat es auf YouTube gefunden und glaubt, dort eine wunderbare Wahrheit entdeckt zu haben. Wer? Wer hat was auf YouTube gefunden? Sind das Bots? Seid ihr Bots? Was wollt ihr eigentlich hier? Wenn das Bots sind, Ich habe kaum Zuschauer, also was wollt ihr hier eigentlich? Es ist so lächerlich. It's just ridiculous, these bots. Okay, nobody's joining. I'm gonna quit it and maybe do another one in the next few days.